Okay, thank you.
Well, okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues in the insurance industry. Welcome back to the Pira IIAP webinar series. But before we get started, I think Francis has an announcement for you guys.
Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have two poll questions that will be flashed to you for you to answer. And we do want to get some information about your knowledge on the subject matter that we will be discussing this afternoon. So the two poll questions, can you be flashed the two poll questions, please? Can they see it already? Maddie, can you see the two poll questions already?
Not yet. John.
Mhm.
No, not yet, sir.
Okay. There you go.
There you go.
So there are the two poll questions that I would like you to answer are these two. No? Are you aware of fintech or for health models? So you answer yes, somewhat know about it, or no. And the second poll question is, how many fintech models do you know about? 2, 3, 4, or more than 5? So would appreciate if the audience will answer these two poll questions. So, well, fintech is the term used to describe technology that delivers financial services through software. So in case some of you are not aware, no? Okay. So
We'll
this
give you a couple of minutes to answer the poll, after which we shall get started.
yes.
So ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to answer the poll on your screens.
And then we'll be able to collate all the answers so that our speakers will have an idea of how much we know about the subject matter.
So John, can you show the results of the poll as they come in?
Sorry, Mitch, I have to end the poll so that I can share the
Oh,
result.
okay. So we can't see it add up. Okay. Don't end it first. Let's give a chance for the people to answer.
Can we know how many have answered so far?
Well, we've got 55 in the room, so let's hope all of them.
John, how many people answered?
19 participants, sir.
How many?
18. Oh, okay.
19. 20 na, sir. 20.
90.
All right.
So ladies and gentlemen, you have the polls on your screen, please. Before we get started, we'd like to get a decent size.
Yeah, the term fintech sometimes is not yet too clear to many of us. So
The adoption of it seems to cover many things. Obviously, originally it was financial technology put together, but it
Yes.
covers expanded into a lot more areas now.
Mhm.
But it's kept that term.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So online banking and mobile payment
That's right.
apps are examples of
Yep. Yeah.
That's a usual idea that people get when we talk about fintech.
Yeah,
Yes.
But
Yeah.
fintech and health insurance kind of new.
yeah.
Yes, that is, we'll find a lot more about that with the help of our speakers this afternoon.
Maybe we should think of changing the name to something like MetaTech
Wow.
or something along those lines.
That sounds more scary, Mitch.
I know.
Okay, we've got 60. Should we take a look and bring the poll to a close? And
Oh, maybe we
John,
can.
how many do we have now?
Sir, we have 34.
yeah, let's have a look at that.
So that's is that all right?
That's going to be representative of the whole audience.
Okay, okay, very
All
good. So we can
right,
close it
so-
already.
We can close the poll and let's show the results, John.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
So for the first poll question, are you aware of fintech for health models? And 55% of you guys said you somewhat know about it, kind of expected, and 35% no, and only 10% said yes.
Okay. All right.
So very interesting. The
Yeah.
second poll question is, how many fintech models do you know about? Okay, 90% said two. Okay,
Right.
I think those are the two that I mentioned. And 3% said three, and another 3% said four. So quite a small number.
Okay.
Okay, Mitch?
All right, so we are very fortunate to have a timely. Sorry,
Please.
can we put our mics on mute, please? All right, thank you. We're very fortunate to have a timely and interesting topic for you today, especially for those who have health insurance products in their current portfolios, or for those who are planning to introduce new products into theirs. As we are all painfully aware, healthcare remains inaccessible and inequitable for the populace, especially for a disproportionately huge portion, which is the poor. Fintech appears to be a solution that could address the gaps of healthcare financing in the Philippines. So we're very fortunate to have with us today two experts in the field, and Francis is going to do the honors of introducing them.
Okay, thank you, Mitch. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar on how fintech solutions could address the gaps of healthcare financing in the Philippines. Before we introduce our main speaker this afternoon, we would like to introduce first the head of the Access Health team, who is leading the team in engaging with regionally based stakeholders, nonprofit organizations, and associations in the insurance and the finance sector. He has an extensive international career with over 30 years of international sales, customer service, and business development experience. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Ian Fortius. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Mitch, and thanks, Mitch and Michael. Just to correct a little bit, I head not necessarily the head of the team in Singapore. I head up the role of bringing partnerships and collaborations to the table. So there's obviously a lot of senior people on the academic side that are the ones in the sort of main thrust of the team, really. But what I'm going to do is, just before we introduce Monica, our head of innovation, I'm just going to give a bit of background on the organization for those of you who may be not familiar with us, or perhaps haven't had the chance to take a look through our website for a bit more information. The organization was founded in 2004 by an American philanthropist by the name of William Hasseltine. And with grant funding from organizations such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Access Health International devotes its non-profit activities to improving access to high quality healthcare to both low and middle income communities around the world. From offices in the USA, India, Singapore, and China, Access conducts practical evidence-based research. We promote the transfer of knowledge. We cultivate partnerships. We foster health innovation. We establish long-term in-residence country and regional programs. In fact, our whole ethos is best summed up within our vision statement, which is that all people, no matter where they live, no matter what their age, have the right to access high quality and affordable healthcare. In 2015, the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit, world leaders committed to the goal of universal health coverage, or UHC, for all. The ambitious principles underlying this 2015 statement were in response to the dire and urgent situation faced by hundreds of millions in the world's population, a cycle of impoverishment and ill health brought about by the high cost of access. Over the years, the central strategy to implementing a national universal healthcare scheme in most countries has rested on the design of the financial model. The most common of these being a system of social insurance where the government collects funding via a pay-as-you-earn contribution or levy from every member of the working population. This in turn creating a revenue pool necessary to both fund and deliver universal healthcare. Unfortunately, the UHC model around the world, even before the pandemic, was already under immense financial pressure for a number of reasons, not least life expectancy, which in Asia alone has risen from just over 40 years of age in the 1950s to almost 74 years of age by 2019. However, there are affordable solutions out there to help ease this burden. One of the most recent research papers conducted in one of our most recent research papers conducted in 2021 was for MetLife Foundation of America, which explores the use of fintech for health and the introduction of such things as microloans, insurtech into the mix. The basis of our findings for this white paper will be the focus of today's presentation. And on that note, I would like to hand over now to Dr. Monica Mittal, our innovation lead at Access Health in Southeast Asia. Monica.
Thanks, Ian. And thanks, Michael and Francis, for having us over and allowing us to share our thoughts today about FinTech for Health. And I guess you guys have already set the stage quite well about the topic. So I will quickly jump into the presentation for today. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, Monica, we can see it.
Yes,
Yep.
Great. So today I'm about to speak about how FinTech, innovative FinTech for Health solution could address the gaps of healthcare financing in Philippines. What is FinTech for Health? FinTech for Health is essentially bringing digital financial solutions into healthcare ecosystem at the point of care. So people from low to middle income segments can pay for their healthcare expenses. What does this mean? In simple language, I would like to give you an example. If you go on any e-commerce website today, and you intend to purchase anything, say around $100, which would translate to say 5,000 pesos. And that would, at the point of checkout, you would be given an option of buy now, pay later. And you could purchase whatever you have already in your basket and pay over a period of 3 months to 3 years. Typically, that's what we have seen across Southeast Asia. Now, let's consider this in context of healthcare. When you, your family members, or friends need healthcare services and visit the doctor, and you are given a bill of say even $500, are you given the same option of buy now, pay later? Those who are currently covered under insurance through employers or have the ability to purchase insurance are covered well, but those who are not, they typically draw on their assets, they borrow money from friends and family, and in some unfortunate cases, they become victims of loan sharks, or even worse, they forgo the treatment. Healthcare is a lifelong journey. right from birth to childhood to puberty to adult, uh, to your throughout your life, and even at the end stage. We need healthcare, and every healthcare journey is associated with some form of financial journey. And when we talk about healthcare and finance, it's totally different. But when we access the services, they are so integrated. It might be vaccination, it might be preventive healthcare checkup, it could be treatment for non-communicable diseases or chronic diseases such as diabetes or hypertension, which are quite prevalent. And for every stage, there is some financial journey associated with it, which is very little spoken about. Allow me to share some numbers with you. Out of every 3 people who are pushed into poverty, one person is pushed into poverty due to healthcare expenses in Asia. About 65 million people, according to WHO, are pushed into poverty because of healthcare expenses annually. And the most surprising number, or the most glaring number which stands out for me, is that 75% of people who are diagnosed with cancer within 1 year of their life either face financial catastrophe or die due to untimely treatment. That just shows us how expensive a cancer treatment could be. And about 52% of healthcare expenses are out of pocket in Southeast Asia, as against 14% in OECD countries. Now let's look at this in context of Philippines. There are 3 main sources of funding in Philippines for healthcare financing: the government schemes and compulsory contribution from the working class, which contributes to about 45%. Then there are voluntary healthcare payments, which contributes to another 9%. And the whole chunk, the remaining chunk of 44%, is financed through out-of-pocket payment. Now imagine most of the working class in Philippines, majority are low income wage earners. And for a family or a household income of for a family of 4 with an household income of 10,000 pesos, they barely make ends meet, and there is nothing left for healthcare expenses. And hence, about 1.5 million Filipinos are pushed into poverty every year due to healthcare expenses. It's a vicious cycle. Now at Access Health, we have actually put a framework together to address the same solution. We call this as a guiding framework, but this is definitely not exhaustive of how we solve the challenge of healthcare financing. There are 3 core buckets where we have defined digital financial services as the first bucket. And under digital financial services, we do have again subclassified the fintech solutions. If you would remember, the first poll question did ask you what are the different type of fintech solutions. Here we have listed 4, but definitely there are more than 5 fintech solutions out there into the market, and they can be in different form, offering different value propositions to the end consumer. The first and the most impactful the solution, fintech solution, is insurtech. It could be digitizing the process of insurance, or it could be providing insurance for specific diseases or therapeutic areas. The other one is crowdfunding. One of the most notable forms of crowdfunding was the mutual aid platforms in China, which were quite prevalent until late 2020, post which it came under regulatory scrutiny. And I really hope that they come back to life after the regulations are well defined. And then the other one is donations, pure charity, where you might have seen certain certain platforms coming to life during COVID crisis, especially like Iiap or Give.Asia, among others. The other bucket is digital savings, wherein a user or an individual can save money on a monthly basis or a quarterly or annual basis for their healthcare expenses. One of the best examples for this is through the social security systems, and I assume there might be similar in Philippines. In Singapore, we have CPF contribution, where we contribute every month certain small amounts for our medical savings. And last one is digital lending at the point of care. I can speak about it more when I present to you some of my case studies. And all of these four buckets can be combined with healthcare channels, and healthcare channels can be both offline and online. We cannot choose either one of those because healthcare is complex and fragmented, and we do need both online and offline healthcare services to meet the needs, to meet the demands for healthcare services. And to for both of these verticals or industries to come together, the digital platform act as a key enabler. And these digital platform need to have four core areas. Is firstly a digital ID for it to work. For the entire population in a country. Now, Philippines is working towards it, and I hope that in next 6 months to 1 year, everybody has a digital ID. E-wallet, there is definite prevalence of e-wallets in Philippines. For example, GrabPay, um, and others. I don't remember. Yeah, Gcash, PayMaya, CoinsPH are some of the easiest examples of e-wallet. But it would be nice to have them integrated, to have a unified platform, so that the data can be easily shareable. And analytics, the data which is collected through digital platforms should be centralized, should be clean, and we should be able to make sense out of it so that we can provide more relevant solutions to our consumers. And lastly, information, streamline passing, making information and processes more streamlined and accessible. By this, I mean the digital platforms need to talk to each other. They cannot be in siloed. So a digital platform, for example, a government has launched one digital platform, or and a hospital has a digital platform, which do not talk to each other. That's not possible. If we really want to make these solutions impactful, we do need to make them scalable by making data transferable and information transferable between these systems. And using this guiding framework, we have been successful to drive some of the fintech for health models across Southeast Asia. Now, I would like to share some case studies where we have seen these models come to life. The first one is MTBA. It's also known as CarePay. It started its journey in Kenya. Now, today it's present in 4 countries: Kenya, Nigeria, Netherlands, and other parts of Europe. And when it started, Kenya is developing, is growing fast, is really growing fast. It's now a middle income country with 95 billion, or I think 95 trillion as its GDP. And it's one of the fastest growing countries in Africa. um, when the platform started, when it started its journey, it started only as a digital savings platform, like an e-wallet where users could save money, and it was in partnership with an insurance company. When the process in partnership with an insurance company, and the user base grew when the insurance company and MTBA together rewarded user for healthy behavior and provided discounts on premium. They also, at the same time, they also formed partnerships with healthcare provider to accept digital payments through the MTBA app. And those providers who would accept could then access loans to upgrade their clinic or to upgrade their hospital. So this kind of provided a value proposition for healthcare providers to accept it widely. And on the way, MTBA developed different digital tools for all the stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystem. They developed tools for healthcare providers, just not to accept cashless payments, but also to process claims. They helped insurance companies to digitize their claims processes and reduce their cost. And at the same time, they've developed tools for the patient to have a front end patient facing app where they are not only able to see their insurance policy, see their claims benefits, but also able to understand who is the closest doctor, where can they find the best healthcare service, or what is the health information they need at their fingertips, discounted medicines. So they created an ecosystem for every stakeholder in every stakeholder. And along the way, from health savings, they moved on to various services under digital financial solutions such as loans. They also provide remittance, and now they are also moving to provide insurance solutions, like people can buy insurance policies directly or through their platform. They have also, they are very bullish in public private partnerships, and they have formed partnerships with government of state of Lagos in Nigeria to enroll citizens for under national health insurance program, and through that they could reach 20 million people. It is one of the most successful examples under fintech for health case studies. The next example I would like to give you is a digital lending company called Arogya Finance. It's a decade-old digital lending company. They started their journey providing insurance to the lower income segment. The agenda of the company was to provide a service for lower income segment to access healthcare financing. Soon they realized that insurance didn't work in this segment because they don't understand the product and the trust factor is low. So they pivoted to loans. And even when they started providing loans, they realized that the segment they are targeting, lower income segment, do not have bank accounts. And as a result, they cannot produce a financial history and they cannot be given a financial credit risk score. And at that point, Arogya Finance innovated a psychometric test, which is an alternative credit scoring mechanism to score to provide a score to the low income segment who do not have any documents. It's a psychological test similar to what HR HR provides a test before an interview in a company. It's similar to that based on those principles, and based on the result of the test, the individual is qualified or rejected for the loan. The other important innovation that Arogya Finance team did was an interest reduction scheme wherein they partnered with pharma companies, medtech companies to reduce the or to subsidize the interest rate over the loan. So for example, if someone is having a cancer surgery and they are not able to pay loan, the pharma company would subsidize the interest for the loan. So now the loan becomes 0% for the user and they can pay the money for the treatment over a period of 3 months to 3 years. And because of these innovations, now they are able to easily support lower middle income segment to meet their healthcare financing needs at the point of care. And one of now there is still a risk if the user who's been given money to you, who's been given money, would they use it for the right purpose? Would they really use it for medical financing? So one of the strategies Arogya Finance adopted is that they paid directly to the hospital, not to the user, not to the person who's actually borrowing the loan. The money is transferred to the hospital. So that is one way of how they mitigate costs. So it's a very it's well proven way of how digital lending can essentially support lower middle income segments. The last one I would like to share is of an insurtech platform called Merchant Trade Asia. It's based out of Malaysia. They started their journey way earlier, maybe 2 decades ago. However, they were always not in the insurtech space, not even fintech space. They started with a completely different agenda, and over the years they understood their customers and they start the fintech business. They started just a decade ago, say in 2011 or 2012. And the beauty of this model is that they have both online and offline channels. Offline channels is where they help migrant workers who are based in Malaysia. So these migrant workers could come from Bangladesh, could come from Nepal, could from Philippines, could come from India to work in Malaysia. And most of the times, these migrant workers would not have, documents or will not have a bank account. They are essentially underserved in terms of banking. And Malaysia as a country has 2.2 million documented migrant workers and another 2 million undocumented migrant workers. So that's a huge population for merchant trade Asia to serve to. With offline, now coming back to our offline channel, the offline agents would then help migrant workers to convert their hard cash money into digital money, which would reflect in their digital app. And then they could use this digital money to do online purchase, to which otherwise would have been totally out of their scope. They could then use remittance services to send money back home. And the beauty of what Merchant Trade Asia has done in last 2 or 3 years is introduce embedded insurance products for migrant workers, which are low cost. Embedded insurance products, for example, a migrant worker sends money home using the Merchant Trade Asia app, they are automatically covered for personal accident for next 3 months. And every time you do a remittance, every time you get that insurance for free. That's one, and that has worked wonders. And they also, one of the case studies Merchant Trade Asia team did share with me was one of the migrant workers who sent money home, and after 2 days he unfortunately died in an accident. And since he was covered under insurance, the family back home got the insurance money, and could start a new business. And now we are also looking to support remittance linked micro insurance product, especially for the family members of migrant workers. Yeah, I have spoken a lot, and I would like to stop my presentation here and see if there are any questions for me. Oh, and there's one thing. Oh, apologies. I totally missed. The last 3 takeaways I would like to share in my presentation is health financing must be people-centered. So if we design different products in healthcare, may it be an insurance or maybe a digital lending, in every step, if we have to be successful, it must be people-centered. It must understand what are the needs of the people and are they really solving those needs. If not, the product will not be successful. The second is the best solutions will be bundled, integrated, and comprehensive. We saw this in MTBA. Their solution was bundled, integrated for all the stakeholders. And we saw this service in Merchant Trade Asia, where their solution is bundled and integrated for their customers. And lastly, the health and finance sectors must come together. Typically, the financial sector and healthcare sector do not talk to each other. They work kind of quite aloof. But for us going ahead, given that the healthcare expenses are not going to rise with aging population, increasing non-communicable diseases, and a threat of pandemic, healthcare expenses are not coming down. The inflation will not let that happen. So, and it's not just the responsibility of government to solve it. And yes, government can solve it, but there are limited funds for them to do so. So we have to be innovative in our approach, and therefore healthcare and finance sector have to come together to address the challenge of healthcare financing. I'll stop my presentation and see if there are any questions for me.
Well,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Monica, I do have some questions.
Yes, please.
First, it's amazing how fintech can mold itself to address the diverse and unique circumstances of the end users, and how service or product providers can use fintech in many, many ways. The models you showed are examples are great. Now, how do you see the future of fintech for health models? It seems to me they're pretty disparate and pretty much developed. Is there still space for it to evolve?
No, so if I've given you that impression, then that's a wrong impression. These are just 3 examples from 3 different countries and serving very specific target segment. Now, if we look at healthcare financing, you will see it's the middle income, the middle pyramid of the society, which is unserved, actually, I'll say, in terms of healthcare financing, because the top 20 can support their healthcare expenses. The lower income, the bottom income of this society is supported heavily through government programs across different countries. It is the middle income which is left to feed for themselves, like for the lack of better terms. They go to private sector. Middle income would go access private sector, and they would pay for healthcare expenses out of pocket, and they are at the risk of financial catastrophe. So I would say we are still scratching the surface. We have not innovated to the level we must. Now, given that 45% of healthcare financing is out of pocket in Philippines itself, and imagine there is a substantial about 30% of healthcare financing goes only for medication. Even if suppose we get a free consultation from a public hospital, it's of no use um, if we cannot buy medication.
Medicine, yes.
So there's a lot of work, there's a lot of room, there's a lot of white space to do. And what examples I've shown is definitely serving only certain population, only certain segment of population, not the whole population. So the question still remains, and a lot of innovation has to happen. And one of the challenges which I see per se is regulations, because fintech and healthcare both are heavily regulated in most of the countries, and so innovation becomes difficult. So sandboxes through through governments, I think even government of Philippines or uh, recently announced in 2021 a regulatory sandbox for fintech solutions or an insurtech solution. So such steps are encouraging, but definitely we need more clear frameworks for both the verticals to come together. And we need a better understanding and willingness from in both health tech and fintech to come together and work.
Well, thank you very much for that answer. You'll be happy to note that here in the Philippines,
Hello.
Mitch? Oh, I think we lost Mitch for a while. Hello, Mitch?
hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay, we can
Yes.
hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Unstable internet. What I
Okay.
was saying is thank you very much, Dr. Mittal, for that wonderful answer. And you'll be happy to note that here in the Philippines, our insurance regulators have actually adopted the sandbox approach precisely for fintech and for new solutions. And you'll also be happy to note that we have one or two people within our audience today that are from the insurance regulators.
Oh, I'm really glad. So it's that's what I said. It cannot be done alone by a fintech industry or by a health tech industry. It has to be done with the help of entire ecosystem. And we can start with regulatory sandboxes because they provide the flexibility for fintech industries and health tech industries to be flexible and to create new solutions to life. So one of the challenges which we have seen in other countries is fintech solutions are typically restricted to only payment gateways. They cannot provide services of digital savings, or they cannot provide services of digital lendings at point of care because they need additional license requirements from the regulators. So that kinds of completely curbs the innovation from the e-payment channels or the fintech channels. And why I'm focusing so much on fintech channels is because they have the penetration into the market. Everybody uses them, as against healthcare, which is used only by a limited segment of the population. So these channels could really be leveraged to reach the largest section, the rural areas and the masses in terms of healthcare, education, and prevention. And also designing these fintech solutions, which is specific for healthcare expenses.
Thank you,
Monica,
Dr. Mittal.
Mitch, if I may react a bit. You mentioned a while ago, Monica, that one of the important aspects of all of this exercise is integration and coming up with ecosystems. It's good that the central bank and the SEC of the Philippines, as you mentioned a while ago, they're open to giving the financial institutions a chance to to be able to open up digital financing some more. Now, I can feel that we're on the brink. The Philippines is on the brink of being able to do something more concrete because we do have all of these digital platforms
Yeah.
already, as you mentioned. But there seems to be something needs to be pushed a little bit more. And maybe along those lines, maybe can you elaborate some more on what the key aspects are of the successful insurtech models under FinTech for Health?
Yes, yes, of course. So for an insurtech model, it can be designed in various forms. As I mentioned earlier, it could be improving the efficiency of the insurance, like either in distribution or either in claims management. It could be that, or it could be very meeting the needs of the target segment. Or for example, are we designing an insurance product which is very disease specific or therapeutic specific, or are we designing an insurance product which our target customer really needs? So if they have a paying capacity of say 5 or 10 pesos, or say 50 pesos per month, are we designing an insurance product within that premium range? And are we providing the services which they really need? If for example, initially, I'll give you this example of migrant workers, because that's where we have seen some progress, both in terms of failure and success. Initially, many, even Merchant Trade Asia, they designed an insurance product for migrant workers, which was for accident coverage, and it was slightly expensive, which migrant workers didn't buy. The product was a total failure. Not even a single policy was sold.
Okay.
And now, after a few years, they have learned and they have come up with a product where they provide accident coverage, but for free of cost for everyone. If you remit money through their platform, you get a coverage for next 3 months for personal accident. Now, and what happened is, unfortunately, now this is not a good way to present it, but unfortunately, one of the migrant workers passed away in an accident after remitting money home, and that kind of put the importance, or put the fear not the fear, but the importance of insurance policies in the minds of other migrant workers, and they have started purchasing this policy. So the education, the awareness, and the right product market fit has to happen. So in terms, when we design an insurance policy, understanding the end consumer is equally important. How much they can pay, what are their pain points, does this insurance policy solve them? And also educating them and providing them easier ways to claim, to process the claims.
Yes, thank you, Monica, for your answer. Yeah, we cannot really overemphasize the importance of being able to gather the data of your customers so you can understand them some more in what their
Yes.
needs are. So that's another area in insurance that really needs to be improved, at least
Yes.
for the local market.
Yes, and Francis, I would also like to add how merchant trade actually arrived at this conclusion. They just didn't speak to their customers. They went and lived there in their home countries. So the founder, the CEO of the company, actually went to Nepal. He went to Bangladesh. He stayed in those houses with those families, understood what are their challenges. That level of understanding we have to bring to the table to really represent what is the pain point of the population we are trying to solve.
Yes, you know, there are companies in the Philippines who have done that. I know. So I think the industry is really very capable, and
Yes.
like what you said, it's important that the industry is able to work hand in hand with the finance sector, so that we can make full use of the digital platforms that are now available. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you have other questions, you can put them in the chat. I don't know if we have other questions now. There's one question. Yeah, Mitch, go ahead.
I'd also like to invite our friends from the Insurance Commission. We have Attorney John Apatan and Ms. Maricel Basaliote, who are with us, and they may have questions or comments.
There are two questions in the chat box, Mitch. One from Nelly Merida. She's asking, with regard to Arogya Finance offering, were they partnered with other providers, for example, pharmacies that subsidize the interest for medical loans? What do these partners get from this arrangement? What is in it for them?
Yes, they partnered with pharmaceutical companies. So the bigger established pharmaceutical companies, and it is actually a win-win situation. Now, if you look at the target segment Arogya Finance focuses on is lower income segment. They do not focus on middle income segment. And for this target segment, it is always a challenge for pharmaceutical companies to to provide their drugs to this particular lower income segment. The middle income segment typically meets the price points of pharmaceutical companies and is able to buy those drugs, but lower income segment is never able to buy those drugs. And as a pharmaceutical company, they cannot have differentiated price points for a lower income segment and a middle income segment. That will cannibalize their market. So a partnership with Arogya Finance actually works in their favor, where they are able to provide differentiate price points for their customers, wherein the subsidizing the interest rate of the loan through Arogya Finance and providing 0% interest loan to the end consumer essentially works as a win-win situation. Pharma company does not have to spend extra money for their marketing cost to acquire this customer. They do get the full amount of the drug, which is then subsidized through, which is then repaid through loan for the pharma company, and the end consumer gets the operation, gets the treatment, gets the drug, and even Arogya Finance is able to make some money through the loan. So it's kind of a win-win situation for everyone.
Okay. Okay. Nelly says, thank you for the answer, Monica. There's another question here in the chat from my friend Manny Maloles of FGen. Is fraud a major concern with fintech health insurance? What are the ways to avoid this?
Whenever there is money involved, I'll say there's always some risk for fraud, and checks at every step of the process is important to risk, and it depends essentially on what type of fintech you're dealing with. If you're dealing with digital lending, and if you are doing a lot of lot of not good business on your books, then it will be reflected. So it's better to have those checkpoints every 3 months, every 6 months on your books. And it really depends on how you define fraud in the ecosystem. So one example which I mentioned was how Arogya Finance mitigated the risk that people use the money given to them for medical loans. So they actually not giving the money to the end user but to the hospital was one way of mitigating that risk. And if you are an insurance provider, then there is a fraud through over usage, or fraud through even through with the support of healthcare provider, which I think many countries are and many are struggling with that to minimize that. And the way one of the ways that we have seen it work is insurance company having their own panel of doctors and channelizing the patients towards those doctors that has worked to a certain extent, but not completely. But yet we are yet to see more efficient ways to manage fraud.
Okay. Thank you, Monica. Are there other questions? I have friends in this audience who are much more knowledgeable than me in this particular area, like Mr. George Mina. So maybe George will have some questions. But from your presentation, Monica, there's one thing I also wanted to ask. And you mentioned about crowdfunding. And there are crowdfunding platforms in the Philippines, but I'm not sure if there's anything on healthcare.
Yeah.
So Yeah, are you aware of any?
I am aware of very specific to healthcare. So I
Mhm.
know that there are no specific crowdfunding platforms in healthcare, crowdfunding platforms specifically for healthcare in Philippines. And
Mhm.
actually, when I was looking up for crowdfunding platforms in Philippines, most of them were for crowdfunding for startups for their finance.
Mhm.
That was one of the
Okay.
one which was more prominent. There are two types of crowdfunding platform that we classify. First is mutual aid. Mutual aid is where pool members come together and pool in some money, and as and when somebody falls sick, they use the money from the fund to support the healthcare expenses for that member. And this has been in existence for a couple of for many centuries actually, and at some level, at local level, people practice it. But the most prominent and most established scale we saw was in China for mutual aid platforms through Alipay. You might have heard of Shanghuba, or you might heard of Waterdrop. These platforms were reaching about 100 million plus people, and everybody was contributing, say, $5 a year or $10 a year, which and they were getting premiums at a point of, say, 300 yuan, which would be around, I'm sorry, I'm not really at the calculation point, but they were getting substantial coverage for critical illnesses such as cancer. That was But there was a challenge. There were no regulations defining this model, and when government of China cracked down on it, most of these models were shut down, and the most recent one, being which was mutual aid, is now converted to an insurance platform, which is Ant Finance platform. The other model under crowdfunding is where people make an appeal for their healthcare expenses, and then appear, and then that message becomes viral and people start donating. So there are such platforms existence. So give.asia is one which is quite prevalent in Vietnam. Then the other is called Milap, MILAAP, Milap, which is quite prevalent in India. And these platforms we saw come to life especially during COVID crisis in India, where the second wave hit and there was absolute lack of oxygen and people were dying due to lack of oxygen. Many people made an appeal for their healthcare expenses. It's like a page, like a WhatsApp page or a Facebook page, where they can make a story of themselves, add some pictures, and then put it on that platform. The platform has financial ability or tools which can collect money from different currencies and then transfer it to the end user. And obviously they do have checks. In terms of how fraud can happen here is, people can use that money which is collected for one reason and then utilize it for some other reason. So in this case, Milap has checks and balances where they actually follow up with the end user to see if the money is actually utilized for the intended purpose. If it has not been utilized for the intended purpose, they do not process the payment, and they also give the donation back to the entity or to the individual who has donated.
Mhm.
So there are certain checks and balances for that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Monica. Are there other questions from the audience? You know, in the Philippines, a major concern really is, I think, based on the last figure that I saw, that more than 50% of Filipinos do not have access to banking services. So it's really unfortunate. I think that the success of any type of program will be dependent on how quickly we will be able to uh, promote and get comfortable with some sort of open finance. Uh,
So that's a very, very good point, Francis, you made here, that, you know, many people do not have bank account. And that's where I think the role of fintech stands out. They are at the point where they can innovate and they can include the population which is currently underserved or underbanked today. And that is what we have seen M-TBA do in Kenya, to include that population who did not have any digital or any financial services, to save their money on a health wallet, which, you know, which can be hard cash can get stolen It's as easy as that, or you can forget it, or you can just drop it somewhere. So
Mhm.
digital money, how do you save that? And that's what we have seen merchant trade do in Malaysia, for by having these offline banking agents where migrant workers go to these agents, they give them hard cash, and in exchange their money gets digitalized. So providing these financial services to the underbanked population, I think fintech can play a major role here by innovating and by bringing these services to the population.
Okay, thanks, Monica.
Francis, I have a question.
mm,
Fintech, although it is indeed making a technological revolution, does have some issues and challenges ahead, such as the lack of trust from the people, transparency, compliance. Have
Mm.
these issues been addressed already?
I'll say it's work in progress. It doesn't happen overnight. Trust is something which takes time to build. But yes, transparency, compliance, for that I will say we have to rely heavily on regulation and regulatory framework to so that we can mitigate the risks of fraud, or we can mitigate the risk of money laundering. But trust is something which will be built over time. But I do feel that the fintech solution, especially the payment gateways, are already building that trust among the population to use the digital channels for payment. And post COVID, we have definitely seen the uptake of these digital payment channels go up, and I really hope that it stays that way.
There is another question here.
Hmm.
Now, from a strictly regulatory point of view, fintechs are heavily reliant on technology and the internet, and this leads to greater security threats. Fintechs today are constantly
Hmm.
exposed to the risk of, you mentioned it, cyber security threats, data privacy loopholes, money laundering, bad loans, and all that. So, what do you think should be done, or could this be addressed?
cyber Cyber security is a real threat, is in the world we are today. And I will not say that anybody has an answer to it. It's again a work in progress, and most of the governments are working towards it. Even in a place like Singapore, their data got breached in a couple of years ago, and that data was leaked. And so if it can happen in in country like Singapore, which is so tech savvy, and they spend so much for taking care of their IT space and cybersecurity, I don't think that we are safe. But yes, it should not definitely hamper our um, our efforts to go digital. And I think as as any other technology, I think banking is the most has the most developed cybersecurity. And even health tech is not yet there, but banking systems do have that to certain extent, so we can rely on the banking system. And health technology is the space who has to learn from the banking of how do they save their data, how from the cyber attacks, and is something health care has to learn. But yes, it is still a work in progress. Not that we have reached it 100%, because it's constantly evolving on both sides, and both on cybersecurity and threats. It's constantly evolves.
Thank you. Thank you.
okay, there's another question here in the chat from Mr. Maloles, again, from FGen. In other countries, are migrant workers allowed to purchase health insurance online for their relatives situated in their home countries?
This is one of the models which I'm actually working on. And when there are cross-country insurance, then there are cross-country regulations, and insurance is a very regulated market. So you might have to get licenses from both the countries, and you might have to be very transparent. So this is, I'll say again, work in progress. I'm using that code quite a lot, but this
Mhm.
is something which I really, really wish to wish that it can come to life. We did see one model in UK with a company called Democrats. They did it for a short while, where migrant workers could when they remitted money home, certain part of that money was channelized towards premiums for health insurance of the family members, but that did not succeed for various reasons, one of them being regulations. And we are actually looking to see if we can implement certain similar models in this part of the world.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any more questions from the audience? Let's take advantage while Monica is still here and explaining everything so clearly. So,
No. Even if any questions come to your mind later on, please feel free to approach me, and I will be more than happy to have a one-on-one session.
yeah. Thank you very much, Monica.
Thank you very much, Monica.
Before we close, I would also like to mention that at Access Health, we do have a research report, which we use specifically towards Philippines about the new innovative models and how health financing can be supported through the through Fintech for health models, and which would be released next month. If it's okay, we would be happy to present the findings of that research next month as well.
Thank you. I think that would be very valuable.
Thank you.
Let's set a date for that.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so have we exhausted all our Q&As, Mitch?
I don't have any in my chat box anymore.
Okay, I see Ian smiling. Ian, do you want to say anything before
yeah, all I was going to add at the end, I mean, somebody that's come from a distribution background, I've been in the insurance industry for most of my life, and you can see how this is sort of a new opportunity here in the Philippines. Because if you look back now, I mean, I've been outside the UK, which is my home country, for nearly 40 years, but I still at times get an opportunity to see what's going on over there. And Fintech is really taking off. There's Fintech everywhere. If you look at TV ads or anything else, every other advertisement is about a new Fintech platform. They've even got them over there now where they're for children. There's basically platforms. One of them I saw the other day called Go Henry, where parents can put small amounts of money into a fintech platform for children, and it just teaches them how to use money. It gives them a new education in how money is spent. It's you put money in a child's hand, they don't really know how you come about it, but this gives them an experience and how to use it efficiently and just with a few dollars in an electronic app. And as I say, just generally, fintech is everywhere now. If you don't have a mobile phone in your hand, you're out of touch with the whole planet. It seems to be in Europe now, and it's becoming the same, obviously, in Asia. It's one of the things, if you can imagine, when I first came out here to Asia, electronic contact was via a pager on your belt. That was all you got. And then we went to these enormous telephones, which are the size of a 2-liter bottle of water. And now we're down to pocket-sized things, which have more power than the electronics used to take a man to the moon. That's how fast we're advancing. So I think in terms of cyber security and everything else, it's just one of the issues that everybody's got to somehow learn to cope with. And I think, as Monica said, a lot of the technology is filtering down from the banks, and they are the real experts. But even then, as we heard with Singapore, still people manage to wade in and hack these models. But it's definitely the way to go. And I think the insurance and the microloans model is just going to take a whole new opportunity, a new business area for everybody.
Yes, thank you, Ian.
Okay.
And the good thing about it is the Philippines, I think, is ripe for.
That's right. I mean, we've been working one or two of the bigger multinational pharmaceutical companies, and Philippines is on their target list of markets that they want to penetrate into. And we spoke with one of them this morning, and the issue is every different country, has a different culture to cope with and deal with. So the plan of how they move forward in each country needs local expertise, and that's going to come from local health providers, local insurance companies, local banks. They're the partnerships that we need, because it's not a one-size-fit-all model. It's going to be boutique to each individual country.
Yes, and they're very much open to really putting this all out.
Yeah.
Uh, right now.
Yeah.
So okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So with that, Mitch,
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank Monica and Ian for joining us today, and especially for the participants for joining in as well. Keep your eyes on the page for future offerings.
That's right. And thanks to everybody. Thanks to the participants and all the team from Pira and IAAP. It's been a very enjoyable, good number there. I like to see as we've had, I think up to almost 80 people on at one point. So that's good. That's good.
Thank you.
so
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
So,
Bye-bye.
okay, guys, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Remember,
Bye,
that
everybody. Stay
if you
safe.
have questions for Monica and Ian, just please feel free to communicate with them
Great.
or with
Thank you.
or through us.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye.
for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.